Let's go to cost of preference shares. Cost of preference shares. Now, usually shares are irredeemable. Okay, usually shares are irredeemable. When I say shares are irredeemable, usually means that once you buy a share, you can't redeem the shares. As in, sorry, the firm will not redeem the shares. As in, there's no point in time the firm will give you back your money, and then they take back their shares. Of course, there are some shares that are redeemable. There are shares like that. There are some shares that are redeemable, but most shares are irredeemable. Irredeemable. It means that you can't give them back their shares and take back their money. You don't want the shares, sell to another person. Don't bring it back to the firm. So, if shares are irredeemable, it means that the shares will exist in perpetuity, all right, into perpetuity. So, if you want to find the price of a preference share, because a preference share pays a fixed amount, you can do perpetuity. So it will be the dividend of that preference shares over R. That is how we find the price of a preference share. Earlier, we found the price of an ordinary share. But here I'm talking about price of a preference share. And because of preference shares, the amount is constant. We don't have to do D1 over 1 plus this D2. No. It is constant and maybe it is forever. So it becomes a perpetuity. All right. So I can write this as price is equal to the dividend of the preference share over cost of preference share, because the R here is the cost of preference share. So in change of subjects, cost of preference shares becomes the preference dividend or the dividend divided by the price of the share. So this is the formula. So this is the formula for cost of preference shares. Dividend over the price of the share. Dividend over the price of the share. Dividend over the price of the share. Okay. What if the share is growing? What if the dividend is growing? Anytime there is growth, remember I said that the price of a preference share is the dividend 1. The dividend you expect to receive over the cost because it's perpetuity. But anytime it is growing, it will be dividend 1 into brackets R minus J, or the cost of preference shares minus the J, the growth rate. And please, dividend 1 simply means that if the question gives dividend 0, you have to grow it by the growth rate before you can get dividend 1. That's the implication. That's why I've written dividend 1. Okay. But if you want to make cost of preference shares the subject when the dividend is growing, it becomes cost of preference shares is equal to dividend 1 over the price, everything plus J. This becomes the formula. So this is the formula for cost of preference shares when the dividend is growing. If you make KP the subject here, this is what you get. And this is the cost of preference shares when the dividend is not growing. So this is the cost of preference shares when the dividend is not growing. And this is the cost of preference shares when the dividend is growing. Okay. That's the cost of preference share when the dividend is growing. Good. Good. Let's take an example. Assume that Basket Wonders has preferred stock. I told you another name for preference shares is preferred stock. So assume that Basket Wonders has preferred stock outstanding with a par value of 100 and dividend per share of 6.3 and a current market value of $70. So we don't need par value, we need current market value. We should find the cost of preferred stock, all right? So this question doesn't say anything about growing. It doesn't say the dividend cost. It just says find the cost of preferred stock. So once the dividend is not growing, it becomes KP is equal to dividend over the price. So here the dividend is 6.3 and the market price is 70, all right? The dividend is 6.3 and then the market price is 70. So you get it to be 0.09 or 9%. That's the cost of preferred shares. 0.09 or 9%. Assuming the question said that the dividend is expected to grow at a certain rate. If the question says that the question was specified, all right? Let me add my own listing. So assuming current dividend is 6.3 cedis and expected to grow at 10% forever. What is the cost of preferred stock? Now the question says current dividend, current. So it means that before you find it, you have to grow it. But the question says that if we are expecting dividend of 6.3, there's no need to grow it. And once it says current, it means that that's the past one. So going forward, so it means that here, the KE will now become dividend 1, sorry, KP. So that means there's an error here. It become dividend 1 into brackets, sorry, divided by price plus J. So we would have to grow it before we do so. Dividend 1 will be 6.3 into bracket 1.10. As in you grow it by the 10% before you do this thing, right? You have to grow it. So that's 6.93. So it becomes 6.93 over the price of 70 plus the growth rate is 0.1. So you get 0.199. That is 19.9%. And I'm intentionally going into detail. I want you, I mean, by the time we finish this, you must have your hands on the course. Right now, I'm sure if some of you pick past questions, you'll be able to do it. I do like majority. Okay. Then let's go to cost of equity. Cost of equity. So cost of equity, there are two approaches. We have the dividend discount model, and we have capital asset pricing model. The cost of equity, there are two approaches: dividend discount model and capital asset pricing model. Now, because equity shares, their dividend changes, the perpetuity formula will not work. However, we have to assume a constant dividend. If you don't assume a constant dividend, there is no way you can work it out. So even though equity does not have a constant dividend, we assume a constant dividend such that the formula will look like that of preference shares. So cost of equity will be D1 over P0. But again, if the thing is growing, it will be D1 over P0 plus what? J, if it is growing. So equity technically is treated like preference shares because there we assume. So if it is growing, it becomes like this. If it is growing, it becomes like this. All right. If it's growing, it becomes like this. But if it's not growing, it is like this. If the dividends are not growing, it is this. If they are growing, it becomes like this. So we treat cost of equity similar to cost of preference shares because we assume that, although it's in practice, it is not like that. We assume that equity shareholders receive constant or fixed dividend like preference. If we don't assume and we think the dividends are changing, it will be very difficult to estimate. When we are doing, we assume that. All right. The second formula is the capital asset pricing model. Capital asset pricing model. Capital asset pricing model. Capital asset pricing model. But before we go there, let's take an example on that. Assume Basket Wonders has common stock with current market value. So the price is 64.80. Okay. Current dividend is 3. Current. So it means D0 is 3. And dividend growth rate is 8% forever. So growth rate is 8% forever. So there's a growth rate. So let's find the cost of equity. It means that the formula will be D1 over P0 plus J. And remember, the question gave D0. So to get D1, you have to do 3 into bracket 1 plus 8% to be 1 plus 1.08. Because it will be 1 plus 0.08. So it will be 1.08. So that will be 3.24. So we will have 3.24 over the price is 64.8 plus the growth, which is 0.08. So you do always the fraction first before you can add, because the addition is standing like on its own. So you do the fraction and then you now add to the 0.08. So that will be 0.05 plus 0.08. $0.13. These things are very easy, very, very easy, or 13%. Okay. So let's do the cost of equity using the capital asset pricing model. Cost of equity using the capital asset pricing model. Capital asset pricing model. So the capital asset pricing model says that cost of equity is equal to risk-free rate plus beta into brackets RM minus RF. That is cost of equity. Using another approach. Now, when do we use this approach? We use this approach when we estimate the dividends. Once it's difficult to estimate the dividends of a firm, you can use, because without dividend, you can't find cost of equity. Once it's difficult, you have to use the capital asset pricing model. And this pricing model says that cost of equity is risk-free plus beta into brackets RM minus RF. Now, RM is called return on the market. So RF is called risk-free rate. And beta is called market risk of the asset. Okay. Now let me show you why people do not like buying treasury bill, but they want to buy something else. Now, any asset that is traded on the market is risky. Normally, risk-free means that it is risk-free. And normally we use treasury bills as a proxy for risk-free. But nowadays, what is happening in our country, the government is even saying that they may not be able to pay treasury bills. So now, technically, it is not risk-free. But usually, we use treasury bills as a proxy for risk-free. Okay. Treasury bill rate as a proxy for risk-free rate. That's what you normally use. The reason why I may not buy treasury bill, but I may buy something from the market is that the market is risky than treasury bills. So the market offers a better return than risk-free. So RM minus RF, okay, it talks about how the market rate exceeds the risk-free rate, and it is called market risk premium. Market risk premium. Another name is excess market return. Because the market is risky than risk-free items or risk-free assets, it will definitely give a higher return than the risk-free rate. So the return on the market, how much it exceeds risk-free rate, we call it market risk premium, as in the premium that you get because the market is riskier than risk-free. Okay. However, there are several assets sold on the market. There are several assets sold on the market. Several assets sold on the market. So the implication of this The implication of this is that if you want to know the premium that belongs to a particular asset on the market, you have to multiply it by the market risk of that particular asset. So everything here, beta times this is called risk premium of the assets, the particular assets. So it means that if I buy a particular asset, okay, that asset may offer a better return than buying risk-free because that asset is listed on the market. So that asset is definitely risky than the market. Sorry, it's risky than the risk-free. So it will give me a premium than the risk-free. So in other words, the return that we must expect on a risky asset is that you must have your risk-free plus the excess premium that the asset is giving you because it is risky. And that is the idea behind capital asset pricing model. To assume a basket has a beta, basket wonders has, so beta is 1.25. Research by Yuli Miller shows that risk-free is 4%. And the expected return on the market is 11.4. We should find the cost of equity. So there's the formula. Cost of equity is risk-free plus beta into bracket return on the market minus risk-free. So the risk-free was 4%. Beta given in the question was 1.25. The return on the market is 11.4%. Then risk-free again is 4%. So when you point everything, you can point the bracket first. You can change it to decimal, then you multiply the answer by 100 eventually. You can do that. You can change the percentage to decimal, then you multiply the final answer by 100. So you get 13.25%. Or in decimal, it will be 0.1325. So that is another way of finding cost of equity, especially if the question doesn't give you dividend. It will be very difficult to estimate using the dividend model, all right? So we use this model. So the question will give you beta and everything. You just fix them and get the answer, okay? So this will bring us to the end of cost of equity and cost of preference shares.